Hey guys, and welcome back to I Like Watches. It's not very often I start my videos on a bit of a downer, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm a little bit disappointed because this is not the video I initially planned to produce. I did want to compare two fairly new releases by two completely different companies, both paying homage to a fairly well-known new release by a huge brand. I'm not going to mention that brand's name in this video, and if you're wondering why, head down to the video description. There will be an explanation there. Now, San Martin have paid homage to this watch, so this was going to be one of the watches I used in the comparison, and they've actually sent me a 36 and a 38mm version, and the watch I wanted to compare it to has sold out. It's Marks and TGV's new release. They've made 500 units and they've all gone. So if you've got any idea on how I could pick one of those up to do that comparison video, please do let me know. Now, incredibly, San Martin only released this a couple of weeks ago and they've already sold 140 units. So it's obviously a very, very popular watch design. And so yeah, in this video, I guess I'm just going to unbox these watches, share with you all the facts, figures, stats and specifications, run through some green thumbs up, red thumbs down, lovely macro shots, a little summary at the end, and then maybe we'll understand a little bit better why these watches are just so popular. Right, let's get on with it. Let me start by showing you these watches on AliExpress. As you can see, they're offering a 36mm version, and this is the 38mm version. They're quite close together, aren't they? 36 and 38mm. Maybe the 38mm version should have been a 40mm version, but anyway, that's what they've gone for. And as you can see, this one has sold 72 units, and the other one has sold 74 units. That's pretty decent numbers for a fairly new release by San Martin. Both watches are available with either signed dials or sterile dials. I prefer the signed dials, and you can also choose the colour of the lume. BGW9 is white during the day and then blue at night, and you can also have C3, which has this sort of vintage tint to it during the day, and then at night it will be green. And it looks like they've priced both watches exactly the same, $254 US, and there is a coupon here as well for $5, so just collect that coupon and then when you check out it will be automatically discounted. Now, I never thought I'd say this because there was a time it seemed like every single new release by San Martin contained the NH35, but for the last year or so they've been using a number of different movements in their watches, some better and some not quite so good as the NH35. So when I saw this one contained the NH35, I was actually quite pleasantly surprised. It beats at 21,600 beats per hour, hacks and hand winds. Yeah, we like it, don't we? It's good movement.
Well, I think it makes sense to start by taking a look at these two watches side by side, and there does appear to be a fairly obvious size difference, despite, according to the specifications, there only being 2mm difference between the two watches. You've got the 38mm on the right and the 36mm on the left. I will measure these with calipers in a moment. Now, I still do think the 38mm should perhaps have been made as a 39 or maybe even a 40mm, just to make the size difference that little bit bigger, to give people with much larger than average wrists the opportunity to buy something perhaps a little bit more suited to them. But yeah, I think that is pretty much the only difference between these two watches. And I know it's a little bit early for me to start asking for comments, but I really am trying to understand what makes this design of watch so popular, because this one has sold really well for San Martin. And yeah, Marks and TGV's watch has sold 500 units pretty much straight away, I think. So what is it about this design that is so appealing, do you think? I'm struggling to see past the hour hand. I just don't find it a particularly appealing design. Yeah, maybe it is a very popular one. Maybe I'm one of the odd ones out. Right, before I move on to giving you all of the facts, figures, stats and specifications, I thought it would be good to take a look at these two watches on my roughly average 7¼ inch-ish wrist. And if I had to choose between the two, I do think I'd probably prefer the slightly smaller 36mm version. I am just preferring slightly smaller and lighter watches these days. I did used to prefer them a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, a little bit more noticeable on my wrist. But yeah, I am finding myself leaning towards a slightly smaller, lighter watch these days. But if the 36mm version wasn't available, I think the 38mm version would also be yeah, pretty perfect for me and my roughly average wrist. Right, let's get you some dimensions. The smaller watch first. It is 36.4mm in diameter. The larger watch is 38.4mm, so yeah, definitely 2mm difference. Smaller watch is 12.1 thick. Larger watch is 12.1 thick. The smaller watch case length is 43.8 and the larger watch is 46.6. Lug width on the smaller watch is 19mm. On the larger watch, it's 20. Bracelet on the smaller watch tapers down to 16, and that's the same for the second watch. Set up for my wrist, the smaller watch now weighs 117 grams, and the larger watch is 125. Let's test the crystals. They'll almost certainly be sapphire. Yep, double domed box sapphire crystal with a blue AR coating on the first one. What about the second? It's almost certainly going to be exactly the same. Yep, sapphire crystal, double domed box sapphire crystal with blue AR coating. Right, I've looked over these watches side by side off camera and everything else seems to be pretty much identical. So I'm just going to stick with the smaller watch now just to run through all of the other details. As you'd expect from San Martin, beautifully finished steel on this watch. And there is a very, very nice high polished chamfered edge running the length of this case, and it actually tapers down to a very, very fine point by the crown, and it is beautifully done, and also a matching high polished chamfered edge running around the brushed bezel, and it seems to have been done very, very nicely. They really are mastering the art of steel finishing over at San Martin. Their transitions between brushed and polished finishing is about as good as I've ever seen, to be honest. It really is impressive. Not what you expect to see from sub 500 or even sub £1,000 or dollar watches. It is impressive. The rest of the finishing is also good. Nice brushing on the bracelet, polished sides, solid end links, solid links, all the usual stuff, screw pins, the same clasp that they've been using now for a long time. And again, very, very nice high polished chamfered edges around that clasp shell, matching the sides of the bracelet and to some degree the polished edges on the case. A beautifully finished watch. A fairly standard screw down case back and a screw down crown with the hexagonal San Martin logo, giving the watch 100 meters of water resistance. And here is the dial. Yeah, a very nice looking dial. I do like watches with the 12, 3, 6 and 9 numerals configuration and fairly standard rectangular patterns on the dial. Looks like the loom is printed on the dial. I'll check the loom out in a moment. But yes, it's just that hand. That is my only complaint with this, well, design or style of watch. I don't know what it is about that hour hand. I just don't think it's the prettiest looking hour hand. I think it's the slightly rounded, bulbous sort of finish to it. It's not a sort of sharp, crisp point, and it looks just a little bit, I don't know, too big at the end. It looks a little bit bulbous to me. But other than that, it is a beautiful looking watch. Great proportions on both of these watches, actually. If I bring the other one in, yeah, they have matched the proportions on all of these elements very, very nicely. To the point where actually I think I would have preferred the smaller watch to have had a 20mm lug width. Yeah, 19mm is just going to limit most people's alternative strap options. But yeah, they've gone all out to basically keep all of the elements of both of these watches in proportion. The bezels are nicely proportioned. What about the crowns? Yeah, even the crowns, look. The crown on the larger watch is slightly bigger. So yeah, you have to give them credit for committing to creating two very well proportioned watches that look identical, but just slightly different sizes. That is quite impressive, isn't it? Right, let's check out the loom on both these watches. And I'm triggering my OCD by not having the hands in the same position on both watches, but it took me ages to position these watches like this, so I'm just going to have to get over it. Here we go. Yeah, BGW9 on both these watches, applied directly to the dial for the numerals and the markers, but it looks pretty decent. The hands look a touch stronger, I think, and you can see actually like this these slightly larger hands on the larger watch. So yeah, they've definitely kept those in proportion to the size of the dial. So overall, I think San Martin have done a very, very good job of creating another option when it comes to their Explore climbing series of watches, and I'm also enjoying the fact that they have made two different sized watches, because a couple of years ago there just was not enough of that going on. All watches on AliExpress seem to be 40 to 42 millimeters in size. Anything under 38 millimeters just didn't exist. And these days, it's not just San Martin, lots of AliExpress brands are producing watches suitable for smaller than average wrists. So yeah, I'm really pleased to see a couple of different size options. I still think the larger watch should have been a touch bigger, but definitely there is a size difference. A more obvious one than I was expecting to see actually when I saw the dimensions on paper. But for me, actually thinking about it, I was just about to say I still think I'd go with the 36mm version, but given they've given this watch 19mm lugs, I think that might play a bigger factor than perhaps San Martin expected, because, well, I've got an abundance of 20mm straps that I can try this watch on, but I don't think I have more than one or two 19mm straps. And this is the sort of watch that you're going to want to put on some alternative straps for sure. So I think perhaps on this particular occasion, the one dimension they should have kept the same for both of these watches is maybe the lug widths, but yeah, everything else I think they've done very nicely. But sadly I am still struggling to see past the hour hand. Now that is a fairly personal thing. Yeah, I mean, it must be a very popular hour hand because a lot of these watches are selling. Maybe people are just generally sick of the more traditional hour hands that we've seen a lot over the last couple of years. But yeah, this is not perhaps the exploring style climbing series watch that San Martin make that I would choose. If I was to pick one, it would be the green dial gold applied indices version that I have reviewed in the past on my channel. I love that watch, love everything about that watch, but still they have created what is obviously a very popular watch. So yeah, let me know guys in the comments section, why is this watch so popular? Right, I'm going to leave it there guys. As always, a massive thank you from me to you for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Take care guys, look after yourselves. You'll see me again very soon.